So then I'm thinking, okay, if we have an entirely new physiology from a physical material standpoint every 10 years or so, why do we keep carrying with us all of this pain and trauma and belief and assumption and things that really negatively impact us or keep us from living an inspired life? And that's when I came across research about the makeup of the human body. And about only 40% of the cells in our body is actually human DNA. And we are made up of, conservatively, a good median is about 70 trillion cells. So 40% is human. The other 60% is our biome, microbes, bacteria, naturally occurring flora and fauna that help support our life.
Welcome to the podcast that guides men to demystify and develop their intuition. I'm your host, Doug Bites. Let's dig into the science and expand your horizons. My guest today, Kevin Russell, is a transformation spiritual guide, subconscious change facilitator, author, and energy worker who helps people accelerate their awakening journey by removing the blocks that keep us from living from our highest self to experience more truth, sovereignty, intuition, peace, feel fulfilled, and enjoy life. Kevin, welcome to the podcast.
Doug, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. Looking forward to it.
Good. All right. So on your website, I also see that you use the word clairvoyant, which means clear vision, to describe yourself. Do you use this when you're working with clients?
Yeah. And it comes, for me, it comes through in a few different ways. Some of it is seeing a scene in my mind's eye. Some of it's seeing words. Sometimes it's seeing numbers. Sometimes it's hearing something. So it comes through in a few different ways, but I use it most often when there's a goal that the client has, there's a sticky situation or an undesirable situation, either currently being experienced or from the past, that we're looking to gain relief from. And then I usually use the guidance for, well, what is in your best and highest good for right now? What type of process is going to serve you the best, as from the guide or the practitioner to the client. And that's usually how it comes through in a session. And then also, when the end of every session, there are always integration and action steps. And I'll inquire, or I'll be open to what I get for those as well. So usually I'll ask, of clients, for this client's name, show me what action steps are in their best and highest good to get the greatest relief from the symptoms.
So
And
you're getting their homework from the universe.
Yeah. And when I work with a client, I connect with their mind-body system, and it's kind of like energetic Wi-Fi. So much like Wi-Fi works, and much like end-to-end encryption works from something like blockchain, the intention and the goal is to create those same connections across space and distance between practitioner and client. And then yeah, it's some of it I'm getting from them because there is that connection. So I'm able to test what resonates with the client on their behalf. So some of it's coming from the client, and then some of it's coming from that universal wisdom, that collective consciousness, whatever we want to call it.
Yeah, neat. Okay. And
Yeah.
also, you're an author, and you've got,
Mhm.
I'm just going to look at my notes here, the names of your books. You've got a self-muscle testing guide, The Science Behind Energy Work, and Radical Enlightenment, My Guy on the Ninth Floor. Tell us about how those came about.
Very organically, and I was going to say unintentionally, but I think there at some layer there was an intention there, but it was a very organic evolution of all of those writings. And the first one was the book My Guy on the Ninth Floor. And I, even saying I wrote it, I have to use finger quotes because it was really downloaded, channeled, co-created. So I had a really massive enlightenment experience in 2019. It was a reconnection, reconciliation. It was a beautiful kind of, what I would say, coming back to my wholeness, coming back to that peaceful presence, one of the most pure flow states I've ever experienced. And then about 2.5 weeks after that experience, I just started writing. And in the session that I had where I had that experience, the practitioner I was working with gave me some information. And it was one of the first times where I was having a conversation with someone and I was getting downloads or hits, and those intuitive hits, those inner knowings. And one of the things she shared was, well, okay, this experience you just had, you just reconnected with your higher self. And in the experience, the voice in my head changed. And only after the fact did I come to realize not everybody has a voice in the head. Not everybody has an inner narration as they're thinking or talking or reading. But for those of us that do have that, a lot of times that would be in my voice that I'm familiar with hearing. I hear it in my voice. And in this instance, it was my voice, but it was like a fraction of a degree off from what I was familiar with. And what I heard in my head was, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you made it. We're going to have so much fun together. I was
Wow.
like, okay, that's new and interesting and wildly unexpected. And one thing the practitioner shared was, you're here to create a new human design. And at first, part of me was like, that's interesting, but kind of ridiculous, understanding things like human centered design as an archetype identifier already existed. But the first thing that popped into my head when she said that was, it's going to be a book. And it was like a knowing. It was just a knowing in my a blooming feeling in my chest of just peaceful, present knowing. I guess I could describe it as. And then 2.5 weeks later, everything just started flowing out and connecting, from science to philosophy and theology to religion and spirituality, and looking at it from a holistic standpoint. And I started handwriting with a pen and paper, and everything started coming through so fast. I had to move to typing, and then I moved to voice dictation just to keep up with the flow of what I was receiving. So that was about 2.5 weeks of download, and then about 9 months of um, production, manuscript revisions, editing before we published. And then what I recognized I had within the book was a really powerful start to explaining how energy work works from a scientific standpoint. So that's where the science behind energy work came out. About It was probably about 10 or 11 months later, and new research had come in that I was interested in, that I was integrating, also looking at the human experience from a thermodynamic and quantum perspective. Really helped to reconcile some hows and whys of, why do we experience this, why do we go through these things, and that seem kind of universal to the human experience, that aren't always fun. So I was able to, it was about so that Science Behind Energy Works about a 45-page ebook, and it comes at it from the quantum, thermodynamic, and recent research standpoint, explaining kind of who and what we are from an energetic light standpoint, and how we can better navigate the world with these deeper understandings of kind of the base layers of our reality. And then with the muscle testing guide, it's about about a 40-page guide as well, introducing to self muscle testing. We also created an 18 module course about self muscle testing, where if you're interested in gaining greater clarity, easier decision making, less challenges of should I do this or should I do that, and really getting to a deeper state of knowing. Self muscle testing was one of the tools that really launched me on this whole journey. Self muscle testing and getting a deeper understanding of the emotion code. Those were really two powerful tools that I continue to use to this day, and that were really like nitro fuel in my own journey.
Wow.
So
Okay.
just
Now,
basically sharing, yeah, just sharing what's worked for me, sharing some insights and awarenesses that I've got, and then offering that to the world.
most of what you talked about there, I'm familiar with, but you use the terminology thermodynamics, and I've not heard that used before with energy work, the unseen realm, etc. Can you just expand a little on that?
Yeah. So initially, when I was coming to a more pulled back view, so really getting a high level view of the interconnections of everything, really. I started off looking at quantum physics, quantum theory, zero point energy field, non-locality, spooky action at a distance, things like the double slit experiment, where it can be a particle and a wave at this, almost simultaneously, and it depends on the observation that really gets us to that point. And so that part of it was explained, or I was able to understand a little bit of it in that way, in the sense that if you pull the lens way back and recognize that quantum is multi level. So it's like a Russian nesting doll where it's or different orders of magnitude that energy is expressed. So scientifically, we are in observation of subatomic particles and these splits of wave and particle at the subatomic level. But we are also not necessarily recognizing that we are also part of energy fields. And we, if we pull back the lens way back, can consider ourselves a particle in the field of our three-dimensional space. Not everybody likes to think like this because it kind of takes the human-centric aspect out of the equation and it really puts us in an enmeshment with all that is. But there was still some gaps where I was like, okay, quantum physics explains a lot of it, but there's still some aspects because we are physical as well as spiritual, emotional, mental, energetic. So that's where the thermodynamics came in, and really just looking at the first two laws of thermodynamics and applying them to the human equation. And I've always been interested in a lot of things. And the question that has led me through life is yes, and. So, yes, and with religion, yes, and with geology, with science, with different narrow focuses of science and medicine. And so, what I feel like I've done is just pulled back the lens and seen the integration layers. So, with the first law of thermodynamics, this is the one probably most people are familiar with. Energy can't be created or destroyed, it can only change form. So I've got that awareness. Second law of thermodynamics is an isolated system or a system in isolation. And the second law is really talking about the universe as a closed system. A system in isolation will trend towards entropy or chaos, dissolution, mutation, unless acted upon by an outside force. So I have a real high level understanding of these two concepts, and also understanding that when the second law of thermodynamics was written, it was really talking about the universe, the massive, expansive universe. And then I come across some research that suggests that our physical body, we regenerate new cells of our entire body about every 10 years. So everything down to the bones. Like our stomach lining is about 24 to 72 hours because of the acidic environment. Our bones, we literally get entirely new bones every 10 years, give or take. So then I'm thinking, okay, if we have an entirely new physiology from a physical material standpoint every 10 years or so, why do we keep carrying with us all of this pain and trauma and belief and assumption and things that really negatively impact us or keep us from living an inspired life? And that's when I came across research about the makeup of the human body. And about only 40% of the cells in our body is actually human DNA. And we are made up of, conservatively, a good median is about 70 trillion cells. So 40% is human. The other 60% is our biome, microbes, bacteria, naturally occurring flora and fauna that help support our life. Gut bacteria help us. We've got little microbes in our eyelashes that help keep our eyelashes clean. So I'm looking at this information. We are not 100% human, and we have this entire ecosystem that we're co-creating, we're cohabiting life with, and there's 70 trillion cells in the human body. And then I think, well, that's a universe within the universe. So that's when I started applying the second law of thermodynamics to the human body and recognizing we absorb a ton of energy in life. Things, ways of being from our family of origin, beliefs, things that we carry down, we're not even recognizing consciously because they're so ingrained. These are the inputs that aren't necessarily in alignment with our core operating system. So from a pulled back lens, my view is that we are all enlightened naturally. We are all already there. We're already whole. There's nothing broken, nothing needing to be fixed. And we have all of the tools: clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, remote viewing, inner knowing, intuition. And the thing that keeps us away from it, those more natural states of being, is all of the inputs we get from our outer world that we adopt as our own. So anything from, oh no, as a father saying to a child, you can't do what you want to do and follow your passion. You need to do one of these three careers that I did, your uncles did, your brother, your my brother-in-law did things like that, because the more we stay in a state of duress or suppression, the more that energy is just going to mutate and transform within us and create different states of dis-ease within the body. And this can be mental, physical, emotional, or spiritual. And so when I start looking at the human equation through the energetic and thermodynamic lens and recognizing a big component in this self-awareness, self-realization, reconnection journey is a reductive exercise. It's lightening the load. It's letting go of some of these beliefs or judgments or comparisons or non-forgiveness or non-acceptance, anger, resentment that really keep us stuck. As we're able to release these, we are releasing those mutated, transforming energies within the system, helping it energetically to rebalance and find homeostasis.
Wow, awesome. I can remember 10 years ago asking this question with a mate of mine who we used to have some deep and meaningful conversations. And back then we'd heard that every 7 years, the whole body's, and you're saying 10, whatever it is, completely every cell replaces itself. And as we knew that some cells, do it a lot quicker and some, but eventually 7 to 10 years, everything's replaced. And so I said to him, well, why is it that we carry these injuries? And it was like, so just to recap there, 60% of what our physical body is our DNA. The other 40%
flipped. 40% is
is
human.
our DNA. And the other 60% is gut bacteria, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep. Naturally occurring viruses and bacteria.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Wow. And so that 40% of us regenerates, but the other 60%, this is physical side, is it's not regenerating. It's doing whatever it wants to do. Is that right?
And yes, and also kind of dependent on where that 40%'s at, and also subjective to the inputs. So for example, if we are, let's take gut bacteria as an example. If the 40% of the human aspect of the system is in stress, is in pain, is in some level of dis-ease, then that affects everything within the system. So it will affect the function of the microbes and bacteria. Just like if we're dehydrated, the beings, the microbes we share our reality with, they're not getting the inputs so they can function. So there's a symbiotic relationship. Same thing if we're eating a standard American diet, which is a lot of processed foods, a lot of white bread, a lot of sugars, a lot of salt. We're not fueling and feeding the gut biome with insoluble plant fiber that's so important for a healthy gut lining, healthy gut function, and to really be able to extract the most nutrition out of the food we're consuming. And so it's a yes and in the sense that it's a symbiotic relationship. The 40% that's human benefits from the proper function of the biome, bacteria, viruses. And if we are under duress as the human aspects, that's going to negatively impact the entirety of the biome as well. So it's a balancing act, and it's a understanding and recognizing how we feel with the inputs that we consume space. And then another big part of it is really letting go of a lot of that emotional weight we've been carrying with us. So we're just creating more harmony in that symbiotic relationship.
Yeah. Wow. That's that is very, very interesting for me. And some of the listeners might be completely familiar with that, but that's really, really interesting, the makeup. And it's not what we were born with, that DNA, but it was the other bits that are needed. And if you took that other 60% away, we wouldn't be very healthy for very long, I'd imagine, at all. We need that. It's not that that's other 60% is bad. It's needed. I'd say the bulk of it. But and obviously our emotional state, etc., affect the 40% and the 60%.
And it's not to say that pathogens or I mean, if I'm drinking out of a stream, in North America, there's a high chance that Giardia is present in the water. So if there's a pathogen that I consume, And again, it's a bacteria, but it's not a bacteria that's job has been to sustain and maintain the terrain in which it's in. It's an invader looking to come in and do something or get something or proliferate. And so it's not to say that I'm just going to go out and, you know, meditate in the mud with open cuts. It's like there's some discernment that comes along with it. But by and large, the more that we can optimize our relationship with our system, including the entirety, the human and the non-human, the physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, the more we are able to be in multiple situations that may feel really untenuous and be okay in those situations. Be more recognizing the personal autonomy, personal sovereignty, limiting the need tos, the haves, or the need tos, have tos, shoulds. A lot of times we internalize those as thoughts, as ways of being that are external, that add to the energetic weight and load that we carry with us. And so it's all connected. It's all, there's integration everywhere. And I like to say a lot of this, when we break it down, is fairly simple from a conceptual standpoint. Once we get to a level of understanding of the physical body, the emotional body, the mental body, the energetic body, the spiritual body, but none of it's necessarily easy because we're all hyper individual. And so there are some broad strokes that we can share that will benefit most people, like get exercise pretty much daily, even if it's just for a walk. Breathe, make sure you're staying hydrated. And then those things then help to get us to a good night's sleep, which then help to fulfill the repair and replace aspects of the body. So we're more functional in the day. And it's just integrating one step at a time, one practice at a time. To your point, where you mentioned earlier, where you tried something, you'd been doing something for your whole life and you did something different. And I think the more we can self experiment with our inputs, the more self knowledge we get, and the more functional we become, the more optimized we get.
Yeah. Yeah, I can remember back around 2010, 2011, I started to have this. At that time, I was eating a standard American diet because we were living
Mm-hmm.
overseas on a little island in between Hawaii and Guam, and
Mm-hmm.
95% of the food came from California.
Yeah.
And we had a restaurant, and we had zero control of where all our chicken and meat came from. Because it came from one supplier, because
Mm-hmm.
we only ever ordered a couple of pallets, so we had to share a freezer container with some of the stores on the island, etc. So there
Yeah.
was one supplier who would fill a container with from multiple people, and that stuff came, and our chicken breasts started getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they were like 1.5 inches, 2 inches thick. And I started saying to my wife, like, oh, I'm just not enjoying this so much. And I
Mm-hmm.
won't even go there with the ground beef. Like, that
Right.
was one word description: disgusting. And
I can imagine.
I was just not happy with what I was eating, and I didn't
Yeah.
feel good. And I started saying to my wife, like, I'm just not enjoying it. Anyway, a
Mm-hmm.
friend had been back to the States visiting her daughter. Her daughter had this big revelation with this book she'd read. And our friend comes in and visits us very enthusiastically, starts telling us about the book. And I'm like, I'm all ears. And halfway through the conversation, because she came to see my wife, I just sort of hop
Mm-hmm.
up and slipped away straight onto my iPad. And I've typed in this book. And because we're very remote, it would have taken 2 weeks
Yeah.
for the book to arrive. So bang, straight onto the Kindle,
Yeah.
downloaded it. And I'm reading it. And I it suggested these different ways of eating, and I just took. And the author said very clearly, if you do this, what I suggest, 90%, you'll get about 10% results. If you do
Mm-hmm.
it 95%, you'll get maybe 20%, 25% result. If you do it 100%, you'll get 100% result. Like, this
Wow.
isn't something that you just. So man, I did it like 110%,
All in.
and
Yeah.
I thought I might lose 3 or 4 pounds. I did not consider myself in the slightest overweight.
Yeah.
And in 2.5, like first 2 or 3 weeks, nothing dropped off. And I wasn't even trying to lose weight for a
Yeah.
second. I was
Yeah.
no interest in losing weight. And I dropped 25 pounds in 2.5 months, not
Wow.
trying to lose weight.
Right.
But that's not my point. What I
Yeah.
was getting at is as the months went on, I just stuck to this thing,
Yeah.
and it was just a lifestyle change. I
Yep.
just changed my eating habits radically, and the clarity of mind came. And so when you were describing there before of there is some basic things we can do that we can all do, and we're all different, and not everything works the same. But for me, the clarity of mind, and I just started seeing the world different. And that was the beginning of, as my wife calls it, my journey of reinventing myself. And
Yeah.
we've been back in Australia nearly 7 years now.
Okay.
And so for the first 3.5 years, we came back, and we'd sold a business and stuff. And
Yeah.
I had 3.5 years of not working.
Yeah.
And I just spent that time. I flew to
Deep
California
dive.
three times
Yeah.
doing energy classes and all sorts of stuff. I was off around about all over the
I love
place.
it.
And someone said, I told that someone the other day that I'd had 3.5 years of not working. And the guy, he was about a 40-year-old, very
Mm.
entrepreneurial, sort of really nice guy. And he said, "Did you get bored and went back to work?" And I said, "Mate, no way." I said,
Yeah.
I need 10 days in a week. Like, I've got
Right.
so much on the go. I couldn't possibly get bored. Like, going to work is just like a distraction. But
Right. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
Well, it's
yeah,
yeah.
those basic things we can do, like just
Yeah.
like stop eating processed food. Like it just get back to as much natural things as you can, and
Yeah.
prepare as much of your food as you can, so you know what you're eating.
And you're
Yeah,
controlling it. You're controlling
yeah,
your levels. And
yeah.
it's funny, like when we cook for people or when people come over for a meal, um, they're I've had one or two who have been like, oh wow, you're using a lot of salt. And sodium is an important component, but just like anything, too much of a good thing can be
Mm,
detrimental. But it's because I'm not eating a ton of processed foods that are heavily, saturated with sodium, that I'm very cognizant of my salt intake and making sure
mm,
I'm getting enough.
mm,
But we get to play in these spaces when we're doing more for ourselves. And I wanted to highlight a few things that you touched on in your experience, and kind of this first step into reinventing, reconnecting, recalibrating, moving into it without an attachment to an outcome. I
mm,
feel is a really powerful place that all of us can practice for, especially since we've been really conditioned and cultivated into societies of quick fix, you know, allegedly silver bullet magic pill types of things. Like, oh, it can be easy. It's like, well, we can make anything easy. It's really dependent on our state of being entering into whatever it is. So if you're entering into a diet change, which is really a lifestyle change,
mm,
what we consume is our lifestyle.
mm.
The more we can get to that point, get away from dieting and
Yeah,
connecting,
yeah,
yeah,
I
because you
agree.
were connecting
Dieting's
with foods that really resonated with you. And so you were just taking it one step at a time, doing what was in front of you, which was committing to this dietary change, committing to making these input changes. And like you said, you weren't even like, I wasn't worried about losing weight. And that's really what's driven me, is like most of the things that I've pursued have been because I feel much better within my body as I'm doing these things or after I've done these things. And so it's almost like the benefit and the payoff, if we can take the focus off of the what we want to have happen. We have an idea of where we want to go, but we're reducing the importance of exactly where we get to, taking right action, aligned steps on the journey, coming back to right now, being like, oh yeah, last weekend we had some pizza. I'm not gonna beat myself up. I'm not gonna, throw everything out the window. It's just, yeah, that pizza was delicious. Okay, back on track, back on what makes me feel good. And so it's by no means any kind of I don't ever want anybody to live life in a way that they feel depleted or like they're not able to be satiated or have fun. Like, food is one of my favorite things, and the foods that everybody loves are some of my favorite things, but we've just adopted and adapted it to be able to still have the enjoyment of delicious, satiating food without the additional impact to our system or the supply chain through all those things. Eating more whole foods, eating closer to home, not worrying so much for store bought. Maybe there's farmers markets or smaller co-ops around our area that we can support and be supported as well. But I love that you mentioned, I wasn't even looking to lose weight, and the next thing you know, look what happens.
Yeah. And just on that, my wife works she works 9 days every 2 weeks, like every
Mm,
fortnight. And so, and not some 5 hour days, some 8 hour days. And all our kids have left home and stuff now. But a few months ago, she decided, and she loves cooking. And a few months ago, she decided, like it's just challenging. I'm just going to start ordering food. And so we found like a very healthy place that would deliver
mm,
meals. And then at
nice.
night, we could just heat them and away we go. So we did that. And I was quite happy to join in, and I found the type of food that, and she had her order, I had my order, and away we went. And then each night for the first 2 weeks, she would heat them.
Mm,
And then I was sort of wondering, I had these thoughts in the back of my head, wonder how she's going to actually handle this because she loves cooking. And probably towards the end of the 2 weeks of it, she said, "How are you going? You enjoying the meals?" Said, yeah, they're fine, because it wasn't my idea, but I was happy I
right.
was eating, and
Yeah.
I was satisfied with what I was eating, and I felt okay. And then it sort of came out she wasn't so happy, and I said to her, I wondered how long this would take,
Yeah.
and she goes, "Well, these meals." There, and she works just up the street at a
Mm,
school camp. She works in the kitchen, and she
uh,
just loves. So they all these elementary kids come for 2 or 3 nights, and she just loves it because they cook all the food and then they
nice.
serve them, and she just loves little kids.
That's
And she
awesome.
talks to them as they come through the line, and she helps
Yeah,
like their plate, and off they go. And
it's
so
fantastic.
she just loves, and I'm just sitting there because I knew the whole time her
Yeah.
love, her energy was not in the meals we were consuming. And
Mm,
that's what she started to notice.
wow.
But she didn't know that's what it was. And I
Yeah.
said to her, I wondered how long this would take before you. And I said, I was happy to eat these things for 5 years if that's what it took. But 2 weeks, she realized her energy was not in that food, that some
Wow.
stranger, and she goes, some strangers in it. She goes, no. She goes, yeah, some stranger's energy's in it, but not their love, And I'm
Right.
like, and the power of love, it's,
Huge.
and so she's back to quite happily preparing
Yeah.
our meals again. And she loves it that much. She won't let me, like,
Yeah.
she doesn't like the love I put into food.
She's like,
So,
I've got a certain spice blend of love that I use specifically.
yeah. She
Yeah.
lets me make her like a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, and that's it. And I can cut her a piece of cake that she made, she baked.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. She'll let
Yeah.
you serve it.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well,
But
to
not
me, that's,
necessarily. Where you go?
no, I was just going to say that's you know, I've had people like, again, talking about that really pulled back view when we ask really big questions like, well, what are we here for? What's life all about? And my answer is we're here to experience the contrast and release resistance or attachment to the contrast we experience. Because contrast gives us information. It gives, when we're in an experience of contrast, sometimes intense contrast, we really see where we're at from a functional standpoint in maybe challenging situations on the extreme end. Like how do we act in a really challenging or dangerous situation? Are we centered and grounded and we're recognizing a stress response, but we're not in panic? Or are we, like Chicken Little and we're running around and everything's going crazy? That's the extreme example. But you guys did a beautiful contrast experiment where you decided, hey, listen, we're going to try this meal prep or this restaurant nearby, just to because it. And I feel the same way. There's some days where I'm just like, I feel like all I've been doing is cooking and doing dishes, and I want to break. And so you experienced contrast that gave you more information, more knowledge about what really works for you. And but you did it without like there was no finger pointing, there was no blaming. You were just in the flow, in the experiment until, and it works until it doesn't work. And it's like, yeah, this is good, but I really prefer the other thing. Cool. Then now we've got more knowledge and information, and it just helps to reconfirm what works for us.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. Like, yeah, I love that description you gave before of we're just here to see the contrast, the difference, like, and just experience it. And some
Mm,
people, as they start to get enlightened a little,
mm,
um, start to not like or enjoy this world. And they're like, oh, I can't wait to move on to the next realm or whatever. And it's like, we're here to learn, we're here to enjoy, we're here to experience
yeah,
everything. And I just think, it's I I I don't remember what the other realms are like. I read
right.
about it, but I can't comprehend from reading. And
Yeah.
I read a lot of different channeled information, and I've read some books that are just so uplifting.
Mm,
From they're interpreting the another being's description of,
hmm.
I'll use the word higher realms, higher, I'll use that word very loosely,
Yeah.
different realms.
Yeah.
And they sound exciting, exhilarating. And yeah, I'm happy. And I believe I've been there and I've come from there. But
Hmm.
right now I've forgotten and I'm experiencing this. And
Yeah.
I also hear and read that some of those beings are actually very envious of
Mm,
what we're going through here, even though it seems at times like it sucks and we don't like it. And there's bad people out there who are trying to hurt us. And I've, I change my perception on things over time. Like
yeah.
my current perception right now is we're in a game, and
Right.
like for people who've never played computer games,
Mm,
it would be a little bit harder to understand it the way I do. I just look at it that it's, you're in one of those Mario Kart racing
hmm.
games and you're going around. As you go around, you you run over certain little things like the gold coin or something, and it gives your
Hmm.
car a superpower for 10 seconds. It's turbocharged or whatever.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, the car in front of you squirts mud all over your windscreen and you can't see.
Yeah.
And you didn't get any resource to clean your windscreen very well, and you crash, and that happens, like.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
like we some in the game, there's built in somewhere or another to clean your windscreen or to get it clean
Right.
enough to get you back on the road. And then our tires start to wear out,
Yeah.
and because we're stressing them,
Right.
but we're watching some other car, and he gets 50% more laps before he has to change his tires, and it's
Yeah.
like, and he's actually 3 laps ahead of me because I had to go into the pits and get new tires, and
Right.
he was going slower, I was going faster. How come he's in front? And
Exactly.
so many different things, and and I just sort of start to view it now. It's just like, just tolerate it. It's happy. Some of these people who we think are the devil in disguise are
Right.
just, they're there to hone our skills. If I
Yeah.
didn't have, like, if like the old World War II guy, the Red Baron,
Yeah.
if those um, Air Force pilots didn't have the Red Baron to go against,
Hmm.
their skills wouldn't have got so good.
Right.
If the other side, their opponents were pretty wussy or didn't even
Yeah.
have a plane, or throwing paper planes at them, they wouldn't have been able to hone their skills. And that's
Exactly.
just how I see it.
Yeah.
It's all like talking to you today. It's like learning new stuff and
Mm,
experiencing things, and hearing your take on things is just
yeah.
wonderful. So I just see the whole thing. It's just this wonderful, amazing experience that's easy to think
Yeah.
it sucks, but it's like, it really, it's, should we look after the planet? Hell yeah.
Right.
We really, should we look after our physical health? Yeah, like, do something. But yeah, as you were saying before, all these little things, and I gave the example of changing what I ate, taking the
Hmm.
processed foods out. But
Yeah.
then, in the last year or two, I've started doing breath work.
Yeah.
I've done Wim Hof's, online courses and stuff. And I just feel so much better, so much more energized just starting my day with
Yeah.
sort of 10 minutes of intense breathing. And then he's got his, I don't know if you've ever seen his little course there, and he
Oh
talks
yeah.
about doing, you're doing the forced inhales and exhales, and then you do the big
Mhm.
exhale and you jump on the floor and start doing push-ups. Well,
Yeah.
because of the crazy results I get with that, I just turned 60 like with less than a week ago, and I can do more push-ups now than I could in my any time in my life. And
Totally.
at 19, I became a professional firefighter, and we were
Hmm.
training,
Oh
and
yeah.
I couldn't do more than 20 push-ups then in a fit. No way in the world. At 60 now, occasionally I can pump out 60. And it's just like,
On an empty breath hold in Wim
yes,
Hof. Let's add
exactly.
that too. So so what Doug's describing is in Wim Hof, it's guided breathing, and I think it's 4 or 5 rounds of 40 breaths, but they're very intense breaths. And
Yeah,
then the
forced
guidance is,
inhale. Yeah.
yeah, so it's a very vigorous, almost if you imagine like a steam engine, like a
Yeah.
really vigorous breathing. And then at the end of the round, you breathe everything out and you hold on empty. And the
Mm-hmm.
amazing thing is, you can hold on empty for 3 minutes or so after this vigorous breathing because we're hyper oxygenating the system. But so what Doug's doing is taking another step, and he's doing push ups while holding his breath on empty, which is phenomenal. That's amazing. That's awesome.
I know, it just blew me away. Yeah, we're going to do this full big exhale.
Yeah,
Now I'm getting down and I'm not going to breathe again. And I'm
right.
pumping out at least twice as many push-ups. Yeah. And I
Yeah,
believe I haven't seen the videos. One of my kids was telling me that he's gone to like elite athletic teams and talked to them about this. And the athletes say scoff at him because we're at our limit. We know what we can do. And he goes, no, you follow and they, okay, we'll show you, old man,
yeah,
and away they go. And then they're blown away that they can do all these
yeah,
extra push-ups without breathing. Yeah.
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 And really, what I feel like it's important to note, and I feel like it's from what you shared, it's your journey, and it was really mine as well, where there's so much information out there. There's so many different ways of doing things, and a lot of them are really functional. A lot of them are very beneficial. And so I would just encourage anybody listening to really just pick one. Just what's one thing that you can integrate, that you can change, that you can do, whether it's changing a thought pattern, changing a physical behavior, what we eat, what we drink, physical activity, adding breath work, adding exercise. Um, Maybe we start a meditation practice. Just choose one and get going. Start today. Choose one thing, carve out time. Doug, to your point, 10 minutes, 10 minutes of breathing can change your entire day. Just choose one. And then once that's integrated, once that's part of the routine, part of your own program, then choose another. What else do you want to explore? And it was, my mind was the exact same. It was one step at a time, being open to trying different modalities, different practices, different approaches. And some of them just didn't work for me. Some of them I was, in a process. There was one, um, I guess, energy approach that my mom had tried, actually, which was amazing. She's in her 70s and she's, exploring these things, which is phenomenal. And she had this experience, and she saw her ancestors at the foot of the massage bed she was on in this energy session. She was surrounded by love. She felt like the room got lighter and brighter. She's like, "Oh, you have to try this." And so she gifted me a session for a birthday or a holiday or something. And so I went, and it was an hour experience, and it was a pleasant hour, but I nowhere near got the same experience that my mom did. And this is, again, we talked about it, hyper individual. And so the big going in hyper individual experiences without an attachment to an outcome can produce monumental results. So being open and exploring, keeping what works, letting go what doesn't, that's such a powerful formula for pretty much approaching anything in life, whether it's business, personal relationships, personal health. Have an idea of where we want to go, do for us in the moment, keep adding positive things, keep reducing the negative load that we carry with us. And the next thing you know, the noise in the head starts to quiet down. The physical symptoms start to evaporate and alleviate. We stop watching the clock so much. We start feeling like we have more time to spend with our kids, to spend with our partners, to spend on our passion projects. And it changes our perception, our relationship to everything: space, time, the world, ourselves, those close to us, friends, family. Yeah, it's wild. It's amazing. It's an amazing
Yeah.
ride for sure.
Yeah. You reminded me there, like talking about going and trying a different modality without an attachment. And probably six or more years ago, I read a book by a lady called Eileen McCusack on tuning
Mhm.
the human biofield using tuning forks and stuff like that. And I read the book, I was fascinated. So I went on a website looking for practitioners and near me, and there was one about an hour drive away. So I made an appointment and I get there, and this, really nice lady set up this studio under her house, and she's got this beautiful space. And she goes, "Oh, okay, Doug. So, like, what is it that I can help you with today?" And I said, "Well, Amanda, I'm sure there's something that you'll be able to do." But I said, I just come for the experience.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just want to try it. Like,
Yeah.
I got, I'm sure there's heaps of things in my life that need
Right.
fixing and that you'll pick up, but whatever, like, if not. And so anyway, so I lay on the massage table, and she goes around for an hour doing a thing with the tuning fork and talking to me, and she keeps checking on me like every sort of 10 minutes. "How you going? You feeling okay? And you feeling any emotions?" I'm just feeling really relaxed. And I'd be
Yeah.
happy if you actually stopped asking me. I'm just in the
Yeah.
zone. I'm
Yeah.
just laying on the table. You just do your thing. And I'm in this nice little zone. And
Yeah.
so it sort of ends after the hour, and she goes, "Okay, now, like, you can sit up and pop your shoes back on." And so I sit up, and every time she's asked me, "How you feeling? You feel any different?" "No, I feel fine. I'm
Yeah.
normal. Nothing's changed. I'm just relaxed." And I
Yeah.
sit up, and I put my feet on the floor, and like there's a chair, like, 5 feet away with my shoes there. And I'm thinking, how am I going to get to that chair to put my shoes on?
Yeah.
I was like high as a kite. I can remember it's
Yeah.
like all of a sudden I'm 14 again, and I've
Wow.
just been showing all these kids how to use a bong. Like we had some
Yeah.
weed,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like and I'm showing off, and I just keep sucking on it, like. And I sort of have a go one of them, and I'm so whack. I felt like I'd had like six, bongs,
Yeah.
and I
Like
was
almost sick,
I
like
was
sick to your stomach.
gone. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, and like when time stands still,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking, how long have I been sitting up here? Like, is she gonna have I been sitting here for like 10 minutes? It was just
Yeah.
no sense of time.
Yeah.
And she's going, "Are you okay?" I'm going, "Yeah." That's all and so
Yeah.
I
That's all you can get out.
eventually, at some stage, I get across to the chair, and I'm sort of trying to put my shoes on, like.
Yeah.
And then she's like, she obviously could tell.
Yeah.
And she goes, "Is anything wrong?" I said, "No, I feel high." Like,
Yeah.
and then talking to her later, like, I've talked to her quite a bit since then. And as of a few years ago, she said, "I've never had a client like you." Like,
Wow.
like she goes, "I get tears, I get
Mhm.
laughter, I get all sorts of things." But yeah, and anyway, I have to, on the way home, there's this tunnel system that's really long. You're in the tunnel for about 10
Mhm.
minutes. And I've
Oh wow.
always avoided it. I always go a
Okay.
different way. Never wanted to go into this tunnel. Anyway, the maps on my phone says, bang, go through the tunnel.
That's
And
the
I
route. Yeah.
just scoot through the tunnel. I get
Breeze.
home. Yep, I get home. I hit the garage door opener, and I go up into the garage, and I park. And then we've got an internal door that takes you straight into the lounge room.
Mhm.
And I just hop out of the car, and and I've forgotten. Like, and I'm thinking I'm back. It's an hour later now. I'm thinking I'm 100% normal. And I open the door, and my wife's sitting there on the lounge, and she's super curious about where I've been and what, and she just
Had you
looks
let her
straight.
know?
Oh yeah,
Had you
she
let her
knew
know you're
where
going to
I'd
work with a
gone.
practitioner?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So she's just waiting for the
She's just like, "Oh,
report.
how'd it go?" And I sort
Yeah.
of come in, and I open the door, and I look, and she just looks straight at me, and she goes, "How was it? Like, what happened?" And I'm like, silent. And I'm like, oh, it's like I walked in the door at 14, and my mum's
Yeah.
asking me, "How are you?" And,
Where?
I'm like, "Oh, I'm busted." And I'm thinking, shit, it's, I'm still totally whacked. I'm like,
Yeah.
and I just stood there in silence, and I couldn't say a word. I didn't know what to say.
That's so funny.
And then she started to get worried then, of course. And she's like,
Right.
"Oh."
Because you're
And
you're
then,
you're kind of non-responsive. Yeah.
yeah. And luckily, one of our adult sons was living at home at the time, and he was sitting near, and he goes, "Mum, it's okay. Like, Dad's fine." Like, he
Yeah.
could just tell looking at me that I was fine. So
Yeah.
eventually I make my way over to the couch, and I sit beside her. And so she's, like, "What is it? What's wrong?" Like, blah, 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 and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh," and I'm sort of like just looking at her, but not, I couldn't say anything. I was so spacey. I was just so
Yeah.
relaxed. So, yeah, I was
Yeah.
euphoric. And
Yeah.
yeah, I've had sessions since, and that didn't
Mhm.
happen.
Right.
Those go, but yeah, no expected outcome at
Wow.
all. And it
Yeah.
was just like, yeah, it just was, and I didn't go and see anything amazing or anything,
Mhm.
but I was just super relaxed. It was just, Yeah.
Like it was your entire, it was almost like your entire, like your system was integrating,
Mm.
and something like there was something happening. Like you
Oh
were like
yeah.
there was a lot of activity going on. And I love with that approach with frequency and resonance with tuning forks, it really takes care, with a good practitioner, the work is taking place under the surface a lot of the time. And then we get these upwellings. We get these like up releases sometimes when we hit an emotional pocket, or it can be even a physical pocket where something releases and relaxes. But it sounds like yours was more like whole system integration, kind of like, you know, present state upload or upgrade a little bit.
Yeah, and when I was on the table, I was telling her that in like maybe a week or so, I was heading to California for the first time to do
Mhm.
this 5 day energy clearing class. And so she was quite curious about that. She goes, "Well, when you come back, like, give me a call, tell me how it all went."
Yeah,
And well, after the session and I was leaving, she said, "I know that what you've experienced today is really going to help you get a lot more out of that class." I'm like, "Oh, okay,
definitely.
that's great." Yeah. And I'm like, "Yeah." And it did, man. It was pretty crazy. Yeah,
Oh, man.
that was really amazing.
So one phrase I like to say is ride the melt. So when we can ride the melt of an experience and just kind of keep that experience with us, there's magic in that. Because obviously things are going to settle and shift and change outside of a heightened experience. So how long were you able to kind of ride that melt? Did it last through? Obviously it's still with you. The shifts and changes are that frequency shift kind of is maintained. But as far as that kind of, euphoric, peaceful state, was that kind of that day, or did it last
No,
longer?
it was just that day. Yeah,
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 okay.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then
I,
kind
yeah,
of
I, yeah.
settled
I
into
didn't
a new
wait.
normal.
Yeah, I didn't wake up the next morning like like euphoric or anything like
Yeah.
that. No, no. But it definitely set things. Like my frequency, my resonance had there was changes that were
Yeah. Like it
very very long lasting.
reoriented you kind of in within your like your energy signature almost, maybe.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely. It was awesome.
And for me, that takes me to, these explorations deep in self-knowledge. And I've found some of the best ways that we can gain rapid knowledge of ourselves is to maybe get out of the comfort zone. I'll take that back, to definitely get out of the comfort zone. And in whatever way that works for us right now. So sometimes it can be trying new foods that we talk about, positive inputs, trying new whole food that we cook that we're not familiar with. Gives us an opportunity to explore new foods, trying different modalities, different practices. Um, I feel like some universals, like breath work for me is a big one, where, it's like, oh, are you stressed? Breathe. Are you low and depressed? Breathe. Are you sad and despondent? And again, all of these are okay states. There's no bad emotion. There's no negative feeling. There's information and opportunity with everything we experience. But with these tools, it just becomes a decision of how long do I want to continue to experience these things, or do I want to disrupt them and come back to more balance? And things like exploring different modalities. I mean, especially with sound. Sound is such a wild, amazing healer. The breath, such an amazing, powerful tool. And I always look to like little kids as reference points. I've never seen a little kid sucking in their stomach and trying to do a like walk with a six pack at the beach. Kids are like big, open, expansive belly breaths, like no holding back, no tightening up or keeping in. And that's been my goal with a breathwork practice, is I want to be as open and free with my breath as I can. And I started early, and we talked earlier, I started surfing at about 12, and I wanted to increase my breath capacity for being able to surf and being held down underwater, with bigger surf. And so my house growing up, we had a pool in the backyard, and I don't know if I bribed her, or if I just cajoled her, or if I just asked. I had my younger sister at the time come out and stand on my back in the pool, so I could just be underwater without having to like maintain my position. I could just focus on the breath hold. So I was doing it for a purpose when I was younger. And it was also something that, in looking backwards, was really an important part of the journey that I've continued on in my life, of deepening that knowledge of myself. How long can I hold my breath? What do I go through when I get to that like end of the breath where I feel like I need to take a breath? How can I change my relationship to my physiological body and push those boundaries, push those areas of comfort a little bit, just to know more? And that's my big thing, is like the more we know, the more information we have, the better decisions we can make for ourselves and others.
Yeah. When you're talking there, and I said earlier about 10 years ago, I was having this conversation with this guy
Yeah.
about, things. That same guy, it was over on this tropical island just north of the equator, and he just
Mhm.
followed, even now, he still follows the surf around the world. And
Nice.
he used to, on the island where we were, there was a sandy pat, we had like some beautiful coral reefs and just dropped off into the depths real quick.
Mhm.
There was one spot on the island where there was some beautiful sandy bits down at 15 to 20 feet. And
Mhm.
he used to free dive down there just with a mask on and grab a big lump of dead coral. And he would walk
Yeah.
on the sand underneath there. And he would practice, like, because he was heading around, and it wasn't like an official big wave surfer, but he
Mhm.
did like mixing it, getting into big stuff. And he knew he
Yeah.
was going to get held down and the second wave might pin him down. So he wanted to be able to hang under there because, I mean, if you can hold your breath for 4 or 5 minutes in a relaxed state, in a stress
Yeah.
state, if you can then hold it for 30 to 60 to 90 seconds,
Yeah.
it's going to save your life. And
Yeah.
yeah, he loved doing that stuff. So we used to have
Yeah.
these crazy conversations about all sorts of things 10 years ago. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly it, and just being open to, and if life's going great, then good on you. It's like, you do you. And then I always say, yes, and are we stuffing stuff down and hyper focusing in a certain area where life is great, but other areas aren't as great? And that's what I find a lot of times with clients. It'll be working with relationships, working with finance, working with success, working with you know greater financial, business, professional, personal success, really. And a lot of the time, a lot of the pitfalls I feel like we've gone into collectively, and certain aspects that have been celebrated in culture, like magnates of in titans of industry, most times it's a singular achievement, and there is like a battlefield in other areas of life. So, like back in the 1800s, like with DuPont and Rockefeller and uh, the different robber barons of the time, like wildly successful business people, but really kind of not great personal people, and kind of slash and burn with business, with competition, not really a lot of attention at home. I mean, contemporarily, we can look at Steve Jobs, where allegedly this brilliant business mind, but disavowed his firstborn daughter for a number of years and was personally, professionally kind of a monster. So it's this question of, everything's fine, I'm making a lot of money, but is that really what we're here for? Is that really what life is about? Going back to that gamification, like, are we here to accumulate the most stuff, whatever that is, or are we here for something else? And I feel like that goes back to that hyper personal answer. But what I have found consistency with is in interviews with those that have reached great heights, whether it's professionally in sports or business or academia or anything else. Most times when we achieve the thing we think is going to be the thing that does it for us, we find there's still emptiness after the fact. And that takes me back to the whole, 7 to 10 years in the new body. It's like, well, why are we carrying these things with us? Why didn't this one thing do it for me? And it's because we're multidimensional. It's because we're not just here to make money. We're not just here to have a family. We're not just here to have a profession. Like, it's a yes and. There's so many more dimensions that are available to us, that can really, instead of just hyper focusing on one avenue, we can have it all We might not get there as fast. I love there's a Native American saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And together is internal with our whole self moving forward, integrate in an integrated way. And together it's like, hey, I want everybody to get there. I want the entire world to be radically successful in the ways that we're passionate about that fulfill us. Because if we're finding fulfillment, and from my perspective, fulfillment is identifying a natural talent and then pursuing an interest. And if we can marry our natural talents with pursuit of something we're interested in, it's all gravy, baby. That's the sweet spot. And that can change focus. We can have iterations of that as well. But really focusing on the holistic aspect and not leaving anything behind, because we don't need to. We can have it all and we can do it all, but it's going to take some perception shifts and some different approaches probably to get there.
Yeah. And you remind me of something, and I've avoided talking about this in the past,
Mm,
um, but I'm going to be brave and just not go right into it. But we were talking there about if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, was it go together?
yeah, yeah.
Sometimes when and this kind of when I started to have my journey, when that started to when I started eating differently, my mind started to change with thoughts
Hmm.
and thing, and I've started evolving. My wife was panicked that I was like, she'll tell you now, she just hangs onto my shirt tail and just wonders where we're going to end up. Like, she's like barely can keep up.
Yeah.
She was worried that that she was not going to be good enough for me anymore, and I
Mm,
was going to bail on her and leave. Well, we've been
yeah.
married 39 years, and
Beautiful.
um, it's like, and I do see people who start to awaken and they just abandon their partner, and
Yeah.
and and yeah, I'm not saying they shouldn't. There's
Mm,
definitely, like, I'm not going to get into that. If you haven't walked in someone's shoes, like, just leave that alone.
yeah.
And but I'm sure there are people who just like, oh, this whole new journey. Oh, you don't want to eat like me. You don't want to think like me. You don't want to listen to the same things I'm now listening to. And their partner's looking at them going like, you just watched this television show with me for the last 20 years and it was all fine. Now you
Yeah.
won't watch it anymore.
Yeah.
You wanted to eat that food. Now you won't eat it. Like, and it's all changed. It's like, oh, we're so different now. We're just no longer compatible. And it's like, I'm now on this solo journey, and because I want to go fast.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like, well, maybe the contrast, maybe part of the journey is like, yeah, sticking your head out, learning new things, doing new things, but then coming back to the base. And my
Mhm.
wife's very grounding for me.
Yeah.
She's, like, she says she's just like, oh, what's this next thing he's going to get up to? Uh, I make her life interesting.
Right. There you go.
Yeah, she doesn't use the word interesting. She was like, oh
Right.
boy. But it's
Different
like,
word for it.
yeah, and I mean, I'll say it that I don't think everyone who moves into an enlightened path, I don't think all of them should separate from their life partner.
Yeah.
Some of them,
Yeah.
yeah, there's definite, maybe they should have never got together in the first place.
Right.
Like, yeah, there's a million different reasons, but yeah, so if there's someone, one person in this
Yeah.
universe that might be for, it's like, just maybe think, oh, but they're so different, they don't do that. Well, maybe that's the contrast your life needs. Maybe
Yeah.
that's your journey, and maybe it's not all just them.
Right.
Maybe you perceive things a certain way, and you're the only one who perceives them that way, and you've got a lot to learn and the more you can adapt to your partner being how they are, how they've
Mhm.
remained, the more skills you learn with other relationships. It's yeah,
100%.
yeah.
And it's just such beautiful contrast as well. And what popped into my mind as you were sharing was the balance of opposites, where if you had a partner who was just like you, that might not actually be a good fit.
Mm.
Because if both of you are blasting off and exploring and doing different things, then there can be an over, even too much joy can lead to a manic state. So too much of a good thing, so to speak.
Mm.
And so having that balance of opposites where your wife is very grounding and she's very, she's like that stable kind of foundation that can actually enhance your experience in you living your life because you have that, you again, there's that symbiosis there. You bring in the new, you're excited about exploration, and you bring that, and your wife can benefit from that or not, just have it be your thing. And then you're also gaining the benefit of her stability and her grounding and her resonance.
Yeah, yeah,
And yeah, I think that's it. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
and it,
comfort. Yeah,
came home to me like less than a week ago when we had a party at a function room for my 60th birthday,
mm,
and I've got four adult sons, and they are just like some of the most amazing human beings I know. And I've got
beautiful.
daughter-in-laws and
Yeah,
grandchildren, and it was sort of all there. And my brother got up and spoke, and then one of my sons spoke, and then my wife spoke, and it was just, and I, even sort of before that day, I was extremely appreciative. But I'm thinking, if 10 years ago, I'd have just decided, oh, I'm on my own journey. I'm off
right.
out of here. Like, if I'd have had a 60th birthday party, it would have been just so different. It wouldn't have
Oh,
been
oh my
funny.
gosh, night and
Like,
day. Yeah,
like radically different.
yeah,
And like on my birthday, well, we had the party 2 days because to get the function room, because there's a lot of Christmas parties happening here, to get the function room we wanted, overlooking the ocean and all this sort of
nice.
stuff,
Yeah.
was we had to delay it 2 days. But on my birthday, my wife and I went out and celebrated the 44th anniversary of our first date, which was
I love it.
on my 16th birthday. So
No
it's like,
way. Oh my gosh.
yeah. So, she's my first and only girl. And,
Yeah.
and it, yeah, it's like I could have easily, as this journey and this enlightenment came, just gone,
Mhm.
oh, you're not on this journey with me, like, see ya.
Right. Yeah.
But and she was the one who was afraid that that was going to happen.
Right.
Yeah, she voiced it to me quite a few
Yeah.
times. And then
Yeah.
plus, like I told you, I went to California and did these energy classes. Well, there's 50
Hmm.
people in the class,
Yeah.
45 of them are female. And so,
Sure.
over 5 days, you get to know them, da, 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 and they're like,
Yeah.
friend requesting you on Facebook. So I'm like, oh, okay, like being polite and like da, 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 da. Next thing
Yeah.
on my wife's Facebook feed is all these, oh, do you want to be friends with this woman? And they're like, who are all these women? And then she
Yeah.
looks and then she's like, oh, they're all friends with Doug.
Right.
And then hence now why my podcast is all about men helping to develop their intuition.
Oh my
Part of
gosh.
it's come from my relationship with my wife because she would joke around when we're in social scenes and say to me, oh, Doug's got all these women friends, like, uh,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I started to realize, and she said to me, how would you feel? And I'm like, yeah, I get it, honey, I get it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so I was like, yeah, all right, I need to go and find some men. And so when I started on this
Mhm.
journey with men, it's difficult. There's
Yeah.
not a lot of men in this space.
Yeah.
Not, I mean, there are some, but there's
Yeah.
not a lot that I can have these deep and meaningful conversations that I love, like we've just been having for the last
Yeah.
hour. And I love the conversations that we can have.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's like, so I've now started to seek out the men,
Yeah.
like with this thought of, it'll make my wife happier. I
Mhm.
need to keep, respect her and keep this very long term, huge chunk of my life, relationship,
Yeah.
like respect it.
Yeah.
And then, and it's like, and I love it that I'm out trying to help men
Yeah.
because, I mean, that's a whole other story, like, because there's a lot of depth to that too, of why, me
Oh yeah.
growing up and things like that. And,
Absolutely.
which I don't need to go into because this is my podcast and so many people have heard that before. I yeah. So today they're hearing something different from you.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, it's like a few things popped in as you were sharing, and I love that. My wife and I, we've let's see, we're at 22 years dating and 19 years married, I think.
Nice.
And it's been, I mean, it's not all been puppy dogs and fairy tales. It's been, and actually, our relationship in a really kind of tenuous spot was the spark that launched us on our journey, kind of around 2015, 2016. And I think on one hand, it's it's a choice. And so I've woken up every day and I choose my wife every day. And for a number of reasons. The other side is the openness to allowing someone to evolve and change and transform, and potentially the willingness to hold up that mirror for ourselves and see, well, okay, my partner's on this journey. Is there anything I can, is there anything I'm interested in changing? Am I happy with everything that I'm experiencing? And what I find a lot of times in clients and friends and relationships, that there is one partner that really kind of skyrockets and launches on this spiritual enlightenment, self-realization, self-help journey. It can be reflective of those that have awareness that they've maybe been here before, and they're like, we touched on it a little bit earlier, where it's like, I never, okay, I'm done. I don't want to have another human experience. I don't want to do this again. I want to get off the merry-go-round. It's I really come back to, what is our intention with our exploration? Am I trying to escape something, or am I moving towards something? And I find that if we're trying to escape something, that's really where we will move quickly away from things that we perceive as less than, or don't serve us, or, oh, I've changed, I'm not there anymore, therefore I'm done with that group or that person. And there's some spiritual ego that can come into that. And it's this I always just go back to, whatever my pursuit is, am I trying to escape from something, or am I going towards something? And I find the more I'm going towards something, the less my foundation changes, because I'm going towards something that I feel drawn to, because it helps me feel better, feel more like myself, feel back to, feel more comfortable in my body, feel less stressed, depressed, anxious, reactive, sick, ill, whatever it is. The more I'm pursuing that, the more I'm able to come back to that foundation, which just helps to reconfirm I'm exactly where I want to be. But if we're in a state of wanting to escape a situation, that's where I find we start to kind of isolate, jettison, and it may get us to new groups that might not have our best interest in mind, because we're resonating with that escape. We're not resonating with an expansion or a shift in resonance, shift in frequency. We're just, it's like, what is here isn't good, and I want to get away from it. And it's a subtlety, but it's an important distinction. And I think it really, there's aspects of that kind of define our experience in those situations, whether we go with someone, even if we're not, doing all the same things at the same time, or we move away from someone for the same reason. But
Mm.
the intention, I think, can help to inform where we're aligning, and then we can do something about it. Because if we recognize, I'm trying to escape, well, why am I trying to escape? What's here that's so awful, or that's so untenable, that I just can't experience it anymore?
Mm.
And sometimes there's very good reasons and justifiable decisions to move away from something or someone.
Mm.
If we're not being reciprocated, if we're not engaged and active, and we're not actively wanting to be with someone, I always ask, well, why is that? Are we running away from an old pattern, or is this person just not a fit? But again, being open and curious with all of the explorations, instead of, the second we decide we know something, we fix ourselves into a particle, and it's hard to change back into a wave, kind of looping it all in from the quantum standpoint.
Mm.
So the more that we can remain in a wave state, remain in flow, the more opportunity we have to be less reactive to our environment, to our partner, more aware of our internal states of being. So we can come to more of the capital T truths of knowing, that again help to reinforce the foundation. Or are we looking for that quick fix, the escape, in order to feel better temporarily?
Mm.
For me, I find those have been distinctions that have helped me on my own journey.
Yeah, I'm hearing you. We've been going for over an hour now. Something that
Wow.
I did message you about that I wanted to bring in was your breathwork and positive disruptions little session. If we could maybe move into that for the audience. And just a little disclaimer on it, and I'll get you to clarify true or not. if someone's driving their car listening right now, should they join in or should they stop this?
Yeah, if you are operating machinery, using a knife, with prepping food, driving it all, wait until you get to a space where you can sit down and you've got some dedicated space for any breathwork practice. So yeah, you want to be in a dedicated intentional space, not doing anything else when you're entering into these practices for sure.
All right, well, take us away.
So the way these came about was recognizing that a lot of us live in a low grade state of stress response all the time. Some of it's manufactured, the 24-hour news cycle, this competitive, post-capitalist kind of world we're living in, depending on where we're at. A lot of competition, a lot of go, 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 a lot of intensity and a lot of stress. So if we're operating in a stressed state, we're literally not in our whole brain. We're not in a whole brain state. We're in a reactive dominant hemisphere limbic system response. And it's when we're in that space, it's like Kevin's not here right now. You get the protector, you get the defender, you get the keep it safe energy. So the more that we can positively disrupt our electromagnetic field, and every single human has two electromagnetic fields, a donut shaped field around the heart, which is called a toroidal field, and a larger outer electromagnetic field that is more similar to the electromagnetic field of the Earth, where it's out of the magnetic poles, and we're very similar in that regard. So if we're in a stress response, we are in a negative broadcast. We're in dissonance. We're not in harmony. And everything suffers. Our mental clarity, our perceptions of ourselves and others, our immune, adrenal nervous systems, they get depleted because we're constantly pulling on those reserves from a stressed state. So the more steps that we can take to regularly regulate the mind-body system, the nervous system, the more we are experiencing peaceful presence and non-attachment, the more we are able to get to that flow state. And so I'll share a few real quick, and I'm happy to direct people to the website. You can actually download the full daily disruption protocol, and it's a 3-minute practice in the morning, about a 9-minute practice in the evening. And then those are your benchmarks. And then the most important practice is playing catch and release throughout the day. So if we're taking care of ourselves morning and evening, we're entering into the day in a positive way, we're exiting the day in a positive way. But then I want to maintain that throughout the day. So if we get an email from a boss or a client, and it's oh crap, we did something wrong or we're in trouble, that can create a stress response. If we happen to be listening to the news, driving to or from work, that can create a stress response. Literally anything. So increasing that awareness of ourself and the way that our body feels when we are clear and peaceful and present or in a stressful state is really the guidance to these disruptions. So there's a few different ways that I encourage, and the breath is included in everything. So it's a lot of brain synchronization exercises and breath work are really the foundations. And so I'm a huge fan of disruption. I say to disrupt is divine, especially when we are disrupting negative looping patterns, which most of us experience. The fastest way I found to do that is with our breath. So there's different names. I'm not sure if this exact approach exists elsewhere, but I call it a disruption breath. And it's 3 short inhalations through the nostrils. So almost as if you had like a stuffy nose or a runny nose, you're kind of 3 pull inhales through the nose. And then it's a forceful exhalation through the mouth. So when we loop them together, it sounds like. So the key is with the exhale, imagine you're trying to blow a candle out on the opposite side of the room. That's the force and the intensity you want to be blowing out with. So if you're familiar with Wim Hof, this will be familiar. The difference is it's the static inhalation that helps to disrupt the system. So it's almost like if anybody's ever had a dog and they got a beat on something outside and they got this low growl and they're hyper intensely focused on it, and you get their attention. Hey, hey, psst, psst. And they look at you and they look back to the thing and they look at you, and then the tongue comes out, the tail starts wagging, and they're back present with you. It's a similar kind of approach with our system. So we get our system off of high alert and high guard with these practices. Come back to that more puppy-like state, a little more like a little kid, like, hey, oh, peacefully present. Oh, there I am. I want water. And then we can come into the present knowing of what's for us in this moment. So it's a minute of the disruption breath, and then we expel everything. We hold on empty for, usually when I'm guiding this in a session, it'll be 20 or 30 seconds max. If I'm in my own practice, I'm doing my thing, I'm pushing my levels. And then much like Wim Hof, at the end of that hold on empty, it's a massive inhale, and then we squeeze everything. So functionally very similar to Wim Hof in that, in the sense that we're hyperoxygenating our system. We're expelling more carbon dioxide than we're taking in. And an oxygenated state is an alkaline state. An alkaline state is very hard for any state of bacteria, viral, or a mutation to take, cellular mutation to take place within the system. As Wim Hof says, we're getting a little high on our own supply. So we're really coming back to that hyperpresence, and we're getting more clarity and less reactivity from the processes.
So just to
So if
clarify,
you,
so the 3 short inhales are through the nose,
yep,
and the big forceful exhales through the mouth.
yep.
And then at the end of that minute, we're taking that big breath in and we're holding it. We said we're going
At
to
the,
squeeze.
so at the end of the minute, squeeze everything out,
Oh,
hold on empty.
squeeze everything out. Okay. Because when you're doing the inhales, I can hear
Yeah,
them. I cannot hear your exhales. So I don't know whether the
got it.
listeners can hear as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I think it's probably the audio, because
exactly.
it is a loud exhale. So I feel like the audio is probably, truncating it.
Yep.
So yeah, so 3 short in, 1 long out for 60 seconds. When you hit 60 seconds, you take your last 3 short inhales in, last full exhalation out, and then hold on empty.
Yep.
And then for you practicing at home, the hold is your limit, whatever it is. Maybe it's 10 seconds, maybe it's 15 seconds. And because these are practices, we're not supposed to get these right off the bat. We're not supposed to be proficient immediately. We've got room to move. So let's say we start this practice and 10 seconds is a challenge for us to hold on empty. Perfect. Then that's your target. I'm targeting to do this practice once a day, and my goal is to hold on empty for 10 seconds. And then eventually 10 seconds is going to become easy. And then we push the boundary a little bit, push our comfort zone a little bit, and then keep pursuing in that regard.
Yeah. All right.
And then, yeah, so that's one. The disruption breath is one. And these are all actually on the daily practice, the daily positive disruption sheet that I mentioned that you can download. Another one, which is one of my favorites, it's called a bellows breath. And this is probably most indicative to Wim Hof, in the sense that inhaling and exhaling through the mouth, and much like a HIIT workout or a group X class at a gym, we are going for it. So the breath is the exercise. And for this one, I pair this bellows breath with the crossing of our arms and ankles that arrive us at a place of a whole brain state. It's called a whole brain posture, or a hookup posture. So if anybody meditates and you have challenges meditating, where I like to say, for about 20 minutes, a lot of us get stuck in crosstown traffic in our mind, a lot of noise, a lot of thoughts. If you do these positive disruptions before you meditate, you are going to supercharge your meditation. You're going to drop in deeper, faster, and you're going to get more knowing, more insight, more awareness, because there's not as much static to wade through to get to that signal that we all have within us. So it's multifunctional. One, it's a positive disruption, gets us out of a stress response. 2, we can use it to supercharge our own practices, very easy to integrate with things we're already doing to improve the quality of those experiences. So it's really multifunctional, in a lot of different areas.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, so people can do these at home. So they can download this off your website, and the links will be in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
Excellent.
if you go to radicalenlightenment.com, scroll down about halfway, you'll see where it's just email and first name. You don't even have to put your first name. And what you get is, it's a 1-sheet PDF, 8.5 by 11. And I encourage it, if you get it, printed out, because another thing I like to say is it's important to staff our weaknesses. So a lot of times in business, if I have a business and I'm focused on manufacturing and supply chain, I don't want to focus on marketing. I'm going to hire for that. For me, if you're independent, or if you're, working anything, if we're staffing our weaknesses, it can look like utilizing a Google Calendar. and make it, I don't, the less I have to remember, the better. If it's on the calendar, I know it's there, out of mind, then I have more presence to focus on other things. When we're staffing our weaknesses from a disruption or a positive integration standpoint, that can be like carving out the time, dedicating our time to do it. And I want to encourage that. So basically, you print out this one sheet, put it somewhere visible, bathroom mirror, on the fridge, and it's got QR codes. One you can scan in the morning for the morning practice, one you can scan in the evening for the evening practice. So literally just scan it with your phone, set up the phone, and you follow along with the guided practice. And then there's also a QR code to do the bellows breath, which I mentioned. And the other thing I call that is the break glass in case of emergency breath. And that's one where it's like if you're seeing red and you're about to pop and you have the wherewithal to just hold back and like get out of the situation, if you do that bellows breath, it can be as short as 25 or 20 breaths, actually, 5 breaths in each of the 4 crossings of the whole brain posture. You're going to be in a different place in 20 breaths. It can be as short as that.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah, it's
And
so
you're,
interesting. So where you go?
I was just going to say, you're seeming like you're in a pretty good place, but if you want, we can do that bellows breath real quick so you can get a feel for it.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Cool. All right. So for the whole brain, it's simply crossing our legs at the ankles and crossing our hands at the wrist. So when we're crossing our hands at the wrist, you can just cross your hands and lay your hands on your thighs because we're going to be doing some quick switching. So to start off, go ahead and place your right ankle in front of your left and your right wrist on top of your left. So I'm going to guide you through the switches. So we're going to be switching the crossing, and we're going to be doing 5 breaths in each of the 4 crossings. So basically 4 reps of 5 breaths. And for this breath, relaxed abdomen, nice full belly breath on the inhale through the mouth. And on the exhale, once again, like you're trying to blow a candle out on the opposite side of the room. Give a little squeeze on the end. So what we're going to do is hit it hard and loop them. So as opposed to speed, our goal is depth of breath. And we also want to be kind of breathing as rapidly as we can, as fully as we can. So that would be the goal. All right, so right ankle, right wrist in front. We'll do 5 breaths here.
And just to confirm, all the breaths are in through the mouth and out through the mouth.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. So 5 hit it hard breaths here, and I'll guide you through the crossings. And begin.
I just needed to come on here and tell you at this point, the Zoom software did not like Kevin and I heavy breathing, and it decided to cut it out, and the audio just goes silent. So just hang in there with us for a moment. We'll be back with you. We're just heavy breathing, going through this breathing technique that Kevin's teaching us all.
Now switch just the ankles. 5 more. And then just the wrist last time, back to right on top. Last 5 here. Last one. All the way out. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze all the way out. And then just some recovery breaths. Open mouth, closed mouth, nostril, whatever it is. If there are stretches, if there's a twist that you're feeling into, go ahead and let it rip. Get comfortable in your seat once again. If you did follow along with that practice, you should definitely be sitting down. Let it settle. Come back to now.
If I was standing, I would be now laying.
Yeah, yeah. So what I've got some notes from my own experience I'm happy to share, but how is that for you? What physiologically, mentally, where are we at in that
Yeah,
process?
I was concerned that on
Mm.
camera I was going to pass out here. I'm like, should I back off this slightly so that I don't hit
Yeah,
the deck and we end
yeah.
the podcast now? No, that was, yeah, I was getting high on my own
Hmm.
supply, bit dizzy.
Yep.
Yeah, it's very intense. And
Yeah.
I definitely take your mind off what your trouble of the day was.
Right. It's
Definitely
like, wait,
disrupting.
what was I thinking? What was I worrying about?
Yeah.
And that's where where I mentioned the dog on point, or really focused. It really shifts our focus out of whatever we were worrying about.
Mm.
And that's really my goal, is
Yeah.
to, yeah,
Very interesting, the breathing through the mouth, because I'm a scuba instructor. I've done 2,000 dives. And
yeah,
after someone's done a dozen or two dives and they're comfortable,
mhm,
I've talked to like so many customers, because our business we had on the tropical island involved scuba diving. So I'd have
awesome.
people from all over the world on the boat, and you have an
Yeah,
hour between dives and we talk. And I'd asked a lot of people this. I'd say, like, when we get down under the water and we're breathing, because you have to breathe through your mouth
yeah,
or with the regulators in your mouth. And we're always
yeah,
taught, oh, you've got to breathe in through your nose.
yeah.
Well, you have no option there. You're breathing through your mouth. You could be suicidal on the surface and you get under that water and all those thoughts are gone. You can deliberately try, you could be about to enter bankruptcy and you could try and bring those thoughts in and they can't. The worries are gone. And I was
Mhm,
reading a book, maybe 6 months ago, and it was channeled information from a higher source. And
mhm,
it said in there, if you have emotional issues, breathe in through your nose and out through your
mhm.
mouth. If you're having self doubt issues, inhale through your mouth and out through your mouth.
Yeah,
And I was like, wow. And at that moment, I did a podcast on that then. And then I sent that to a buddy who's is a an avid diver.
mhm.
And I said, listen to my podcast on this. Because I'd done a lot of Google searches on inhaling through the mouth.
Yeah,
And they all copy and paste each other and they all tell you it's bad
yep,
because one person wrote that once and everyone else has copied that. And you read through and they're all laid out differently and they're all the same information. So
mhm,
people just copy and paste.
yeah,
So, yeah. And so for me now, if I'm having, I'm getting down on myself and self doubts, I deliberately start inhaling through my mouth for a minute or two.
yeah,
And I don't feel euphoric, but the the doubts, the self
yeah,
doubt starts to fade
yeah.
away, and it
Clouds
just
kind of part. Yeah, those
mm,
feelings start to alleviate a little bit.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
that's great. Yeah.
And this just takes me back to what I mentioned before, where I'm all about yes and instead of either or. And there is a time and a place for only nostril breathing. And so, if we're from a yogic tradition, there's alternate nostril breathing.
Hmm.
There's box breath, where there's a inhale through the nose, hold on full, exhale through the nose, hold on empty. So there is a lot of function for nostril breathing as well. But if I'm looking to cut wood, I'm not going to use a hammer. I'm going
Mm.
to use the saw. And so it's just, a slight variation on the tool for the intention of the function of the experience, of the expression. So the disruption, that bellows breath is intentional for rapid disruption of an undesired state. Now, if we were looking to um, breathe for better sleep, I would be guiding a different breath, because there's I mean, I'd say breath is universal, but the quality of breath and the style of breathing is more tailored to what we're wanting to use it for. Golf just came in, much like with golf. Like, you got different clubs for different shots with different intention for different uses. Same kind of approach. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But this has been wonderful. I think we've given the listeners a lot to take in today. And I think if they're smart, they'll put this one on a second or third time as over, a period of weeks or month or two and take it in again. And maybe even 6 months later, they'd want to listen to this one again. There's so
I love it.
much varied and deep, powerful, purposeful information that you've brought
Yeah.
out. Loved it. Absolutely loved it.
It's,
Now,
it's been a
all
pleasure,
of
Doug. I
your
appreciate it.
all of your contact info is in the
Mhm.
show notes. Is there any
Beautiful.
final thing that you haven't said that you think you feel you need to say?
Just find get busy creating a life you love
Absolutely. That's
with a
that's a
band
word of wisdom.
with abandon. The more we can move out of fear, the more we can hurdle self-doubt, the more we can coast over those speed bumps of other people's input or other people's programs. the more that we come back to the true nature of our reality. And that's something for each of us to discover and connect with individually.
Yeah.
So I encourage everyone on your journey, keep taking those steps. And you don't have to go it alone.
No, exactly. Yeah, that's beautiful. Thanks for your time. And I think that's a wrap. It's been an amazing session and wonderful information. Thanks, Kevin.
I can't extend my gratitude enough for who you are, for what you're doing, and for leaning into that more challenging demographic of let's build that intuition in the masculine and let's integrate, and we can all get there together, even though sometimes it doesn't feel like it. And that's the potential for us. So thank you for all the work you're doing, and thank you for the time and the conversation. It was an absolute pleasure. It was a treat.
Excellent. Thank you. Bye, mate. Well, we're at the end of another thought-provoking episode. Remember to subscribe so you'll be alerted to new episodes. I want to say thank you to the men who are joining me on this journey of intuitive development. I truly hope our time together has expanded your reality and reinforced trust in your ever-reliable gut feeling. Embrace your intuition. It will not lead you astray. Until next time, stay tuned, stay curious, and trust your gut.